They didn't know what it was at first. No one did. On the morning of October 2nd, 2027, the Jet Propulsion Lab received a narrowband transmission that didn't match any known pattern. It came from the space around Saturn, a band of signals cycling every 61 seconds. At first, they thought it was a glitch in the Cassini relay backup. Cassini had gone offline years ago, but the network sometimes still pinged the system for archive data. What they found instead was new. The message wasn't digital, but mechanical. That was the first clue. It repeated in threes, 3 pulses, 3 tones, then silence, then again, and again. They ran it through every language model, every spectrograph, every decoding tool. Nothing. It was just a pattern, but it was too precise to be natural. NASA flagged it as a potential anomaly and contacted their Deep Space Network partners in Australia and Spain. The signal was real and it was strong, far stronger than it should have been for something bouncing around the orbit of Saturn. That's when Dr. Lena Morrissey entered the picture. She'd been brought on as an astrophysicist, but her background was broader. She'd worked with the Vatican on signal decryption. She'd consulted with the Pentagon on frequency warfare. She knew when something wasn't human, and she knew instantly that this wasn't just a pattern. It was a beacon, a warning, or worse, a lure. What troubled her most wasn't what the signal said. It was where it came from. All data pointed to an object inside the B ring of Saturn, orbiting just outside the Shepherd moons. But there was no object listed in any of the latest orbital maps. Nothing of size, nothing at all. She cross-referenced old scans from Cassini. No changes. She compared the latest infrared sweeps from Webb. There it was. Faint, but massive. Something colder than ice and larger than any known satellite. At first glance, it looked like a moon. But it wasn't in orbit. It was still, suspended, anchored in space. The object was roughly 18,000 kilometers in diameter, larger than Earth's moon. It gave off no light, no heat, no electromagnetic signature. Nothing except nothing. The signal, the message that pulsed every 61 seconds like a heartbeat. If it had mass and it wasn't orbiting, something was wrong, very wrong. When Morrissey presented her findings to the Internal Review Board, they dismissed it. It's a dead rock, someone said, a long dead ice core. But she knew better. She'd seen something move in the background of the scan. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Not fast, not noticeable, but subtle. The kind of movement only something alive would make. Something watching. She stared at the latest scan for hours, zooming into the darker regions near the edge. And there it was again. A shift, a tremble. Something curled in the dark, waiting. She didn't know how to say it yet. Not in a scientific way, but in her gut, she already believed it. That wasn't a moon near Saturn. That wasn't a natural formation. That was something alive, and it had just started to wake up. The team at JPL didn't want to believe her. Dr. Morrissey's report had been quietly filed under pending review, a polite way of burying it. But she wasn't finished. She reran the Webb telescope data herself, unauthorized, after hours, through a colleague's access codes. She focused the scan not on the structure itself, but on the space around it. She adjusted the color gradients in the infrared, pushed the parameters past safe thresholds, and let the data speak. That's when she saw them. Two symmetrical zones, each spanning nearly 3,000 kilometers in diameter, flanking either side of the mass. At first, they seemed like cold voids, like impact scars on an icy body. But they were too perfect, circular, equidistant, and they glowed slightly warmer than the rest of the body, as if something beneath the surface radiated heat through a thin membrane. She inverted the spectrum. The circles blinked. It was subtle, barely perceptible, but they shifted, like the dilation of pupils under light. She ran the feed back at 8x speed, then 16x. The flicker repeated every 61 seconds, exactly in sync with the signal. Her hands trembled. She rewound the data again, paused it, enhanced the contrast. The structure had eyes. She emailed the file to her private server, then wiped the terminal history. The discovery was too unstable to risk vanishing in committee. The implications were too vast. She called Dr. Yuki Tanaka next, an exobiologist working out of Tokyo with whom she'd collaborated during the Arecibo revival. Tanaka owed her. She didn't waste time explaining. She just sent the footage. 5 minutes later, he called her in silence. No greeting, no small talk. "Do you understand what this means?" he said, voice flat. "I think so," she said. "It's not a moon. It's not a construct. It's watching," he whispered, "and it's responding to observation." They agreed to meet in Geneva. Neutral ground. Tanaka said he had data, recent radio readings from a satellite that passed Saturn on a classified European mission. The signal had appeared there too, but this time it was distorted, as if something had tried to imitate the ping imperfectly. Something had noticed they were listening, and it was trying to speak back. Lena took no chances. She didn't report her travel. She didn't check in with her handler. She booked a commercial flight under a pseudonym and erased all traceable records. Still, she felt eyes on her every step. At the airport, on the plane, even in her dreams. The night before her flight, she slept in her lab. She couldn't help herself. She ran the infrared scan one more time, compulsively, like checking the door you know you already locked. The two massive voids were still there. But something else had changed. Between the eyes, along the surface of the massive body, something new had appeared. A slit, long and curved. Too wide to be a crater, too shallow to be a crevice. It hadn't been there before. She checked the older frames. It had opened while she slept. A mouth. The creature near Saturn had opened its mouth, and it was smiling. Tanaka looked worse than she expected. His coat was too big, wrinkled, the kind of thing you grab when you haven't been home in days. He didn't greet her in public, just nodded once. Eyes scanning the lobby of the Geneva Transit Center like he was expecting someone to drag him into a van. They walked in silence for 3 blocks. No taxis, no phones. He stopped in front of a nondescript black door with no nameplate, no buzzer. He knocked twice. Then, twice again, slower. The door opened. They were inside what looked like a server farm. Dozens of humming towers lined the walls, but the air was warm and stale. It wasn't official. It was off-grid. A lab built for something no government had approved. He gestured her to sit at a terminal and pulled up the waveform. ... This is from Echo 7, he said. Classified European deep space platform. It passed the outer edge of Saturn's magnetosphere 12 days ago. Didn't report back. He pressed play. At first, it sounded like static. Then rhythm. Then shape. The tone didn't repeat like before. This time, it stuttered. Like it was trying. Like it was learning. It mimicked the ping, Tanaka said. Almost perfectly, but listen. He played it again, then overlaid the original. The difference was small, subtle, but real. The new version had inflection, a pause like breath, a slight warble like tone. It wasn't just noise. It's changing, she said. No, it's evolving. Lena stared at the waveform. It moved like something alive, not mechanical, not artificial, like the sound of something waking up, confused, mimicking its environment to survive. A baby learning to cry. Then Tanaka pulled up the visual feed. This was Echo 7's final image before it went dark. The screen showed the black shape from her scans, but closer. Far closer. No longer just a shadow in infrared. It was a form now. Smooth surface, but shifting. Not rock, not metal. Something like skin. Gray, but tinged with green and violet near the edges. Fractal-like patterns shimmered across it, moving slowly, pulsing. As they watched, the creature twitched. A ripple passed through its structure. One of the eye voids blinked. It knew the satellite was there, Tanaka said. It wasn't sleeping. Lena felt her breath catch. So it's aware, and it responds to attention. He nodded. Worse, it needs it. He tapped a key. The image zoomed out slightly, showing the faint glow of Saturn in the distance. It's facing the planet now. It wasn't before. They stared in silence. If it was turning towards Saturn, it was choosing. I ran the mass estimates again, he said. It's not the size of a moon. It's larger, denser, hollow in some places. Not a body, a vessel. Lena looked at him. Are you saying, I think it's not just alive. I think it was made, or grown, and something's inside. Her mind struggled to hold the thought. She'd come looking for a signal. What she'd found was a god, and now it had noticed her name. The last data packet from Echo 7 wasn't a signal, it was a scream. Tanaka didn't say it out loud, but Lena saw it in his face. The waveform was distorted, jagged, peaking in strange intervals. Too erratic to be a mechanical fault, too violent to be interference. It was a broadband burst, 36 simultaneous transmissions firing across the spectrum in a fraction of a second. Then, silence. He leaned in, scrubbed back a few frames, and played the video again. It was the interior of the satellite, just a status feed from a rear-facing diagnostic cam. Nothing unusual, until the lights dimmed. For 2 full seconds, the power inside the satellite dropped to 2%. Then, everything surged beyond capacity. Voltage spiked. Circuits burned out. The audio feed fractured. In the background, buried deep in the noise, something moved. Not the satellite, not the creature. Inside the feed, the static twisted. The sound bent inward, like a tape played backwards. Lena had seen this before, in footage taken from inside high-G experimental aircraft. Moments before pilots blacked out. Audio collapsing under the pressure of space-time distortion. "What am I looking at?" she asked. Tanaka sat back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I think it pulled the satellite in." Lena's stomach dropped. "Like a gravity well?" "No, not gravity. Space itself folded, just for a moment. Like it reached out." He nodded and grabbed it. There was no explosion, no trajectory, no wreckage. Echo 7 was simply gone. One frame it was there, the next it wasn't. Lena knew how that would sound to the committees, to the military. They'd call it a data fault, a sensor error, a timing mismatch. But she could see it now, frame by frame. The satellite didn't move. Space did. "What's the range on this thing?" she asked. "We don't know." "How far could it reach?" Tanaka didn't answer. He opened another window, classified logs, redacted headers. He hovered his mouse over a set of coordinates. "What is that?" "A relay drone," he said. "We sent it past Uranus 3 days ago." Lena's eyes widened. "That's 600 million miles from Saturn." "It's offline now. Same signature, same energy spike. One burst, then blackout." Lena backed away from the monitor. "You're saying it can reach across the outer solar system?" "I'm saying we don't know what reach even means anymore." They stood in silence, the hum of the servers growing louder in her ears. "Does NASA know?" she whispered. He hesitated. "They will soon." "What about the Pentagon?" "They've already moved a black project into orbit, low profile. They're not asking questions. They're preparing to fire." Lena's hands tightened into fists. "They're going to provoke..." Tanaka didn't reply. Lena turned back to the paused video. On the final frame, just before Echo 7 vanished, the creature's surface shimmered. A new shape had formed. Small, geometric, unmistakable. A hand. It had raised a hand toward the satellite. It hadn't grabbed it. It had waved. The name came from an older program, something long buried in the Defense Advanced Research Project's archives. Talon was meant to be an orbital weapons platform, autonomous, high-yield, and silent. It never saw official deployment. At least, that's what the report said. But now, it was active again, revived, and aimed straight at Saturn. Lena found out through a ghost contact buried inside Lockheed's comms grid. A single message forwarded from a compromised node in Greenland. Project Talon, locked target, authorization level Omega. She didn't sleep that night. She paced the narrow corridor outside her hotel room in Geneva, staring out at the fog-drenched rooftops. Every few hours, she checked the deep space spectrograph. The creature hadn't moved, but the signal had changed again. The pulse rate was increasing, from 61 seconds to 58, then to 54. It wasn't random. It was tracking something, counting, By dawn, she knew what it was. It was responding to the launch. Talon had left Earth's orbit 12 hours earlier. A black cylinder, no markings, no heat signature. Lena accessed a hidden telemetry feed, bounced through 6 proxy nodes and an encrypted Russian satellite. She watched the rocket clear the atmosphere and vanish into dark trajectory. She called Tanaka. He answered on the second ring. "They're going to fire at it," she said. "I know. You have to stop them. I can't." He replied, "I tried. They won't listen. They think it's a threat." It hasn't attacked anything. It erased a satellite. It waved. There was a pause. She could hear his breathing. "It waved," she said again, quieter. Another pause. Then, "You're not the only one watching it, Lena. The Chinese, the Russians, even private firms. It's not just NASA anymore. And not everyone sees a god. Some just see a target." She felt cold all over. How long until Talon reaches I? 38 hours. And then what? He didn't answer. Lena closed the laptop and walked to the window. The street below was quiet. The world still turned, unaware of what loomed beyond the gas giants. No news report, no public announcement, just silence. That's when her laptop chirped. An incoming feed, not from Tanaka, from a private telescope array in Chile, one she hadn't pinged. The message was short. "You were right. It's moving." She opened the live feed. The creature had changed position. No rotation, no orbit shift. It had relocated. A jump. Across thousands of kilometers in a single instant. No energy spike, no trace. One frame it was there. The next, it was closer to Saturn's pole. Then the signal changed again. It wasn't a tone anymore. It was sound. Words. Layered in static. Alien syllables, stretched and reversed. But in the center, she heard it. One word. Twice. Once in a voice like thunder. Once in a whisper like a dying. The creature near Saturn had spoken her name, and Talon was still on its way. Lena froze, her breath caught in her throat. The voice wasn't just a sound, it was a violation. Her name, spoken in dual tones, one like thunder, one a dying whisper, came not from the air, but from inside her skull. It bypassed her ears, her logic, her control. She replayed the clip from the Chilean telescope feed, hands trembling, expecting, hoping it was a glitch. But it wasn't. The voice was real. Her name, Lena. She remembered a night on Marshab, 4 years ago, when her radio had crackled in the dead of night. Static, then her own voice, whispering her name back to her, as if the signal had bounced off something impossible. She dismissed it as exhaustion, a glitch in the comms. Now, the memory clawed at her. Had it been the creature even then, reaching across the void? She sent the file to Tanaka. His call came within minutes, his voice tight, like wire stretched to snapping. "I analyzed the waveform," he said. "You're not hallucinating." "I didn't think I was." "There are markers, subaudible spikes in the harmonic range. It's designed for human perception, specifically your perception. The tones match your voice print from the Marshab logs. Even your neural scan from the project. It's targeting you, Lena." She stood in her Geneva hotel room, the city outside muffled by a silence that wasn't natural. She thought of stargazing in the Grand Canyon as a child, the sky so vast it felt like it could swallow her whole. That same sky now felt like a lie. Something had been watching her even then. "What does it want?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't know, but it's trying to connect." Lena gripped the edge of her desk. She pulled up the Chilean feed again. Saturn glowed, serene and distant, but the creature wasn't there. It had moved, not orbiting, circling, aligning with her position on Earth as if drawn by her gaze. Stations from the ISS to a Cold War-era tracker in Greenland confirmed it. The thing was orienting toward her. Then, another alert. From the Canadian array, a pressure shift above Geneva. Not weather, not a satellite, something else. She ran to the window. Clouds churned in silence, spiraling into a perfect circle. Through it, stars, not Earth's, wrong stars. The thing near Saturn had opened something in the sky, and it was looking through. She didn't blink, couldn't. The circle above Geneva hung in silence, as though reality itself had been pinched open. There was no wind, no rain, no storm, just a stillness so complete it pressed against her ears. A wrong kind of quiet, not absence, but pressure. Like the air was being held back. She stepped back from the window. Her heart was hammering, but not racing. It beat slow and heavy, like it was syncing with something outside her body. She tried to look away, to convince herself it was some freak weather pattern, some trick of light. But her legs wouldn't move. Her gaze stayed fixed on the hole in the clouds. The stars didn't match. She was sure of it now. She pulled up a star map on her laptop and cross-referenced the coordinates. Nothing aligned. The constellations in the sky above her didn't exist. Not from Earth, not from this solar system. They were alien. Then the light changed. It was faint, barely aglow, but the circle in the sky began to shift from silver to green. Not a beam, not a spotlight. A color that soaked into the edges of things. The street signs, the bricks, the glass, her skin. She held her hands out. The color bled into her fingers, like ink in water. She felt warmth, not heat, but familiarity, a presence. The same one from the voice, not threatening, not violent, intentional. A sharp knock on the hotel door made her jump. She turned. 3 more knocks, sharp, measured. She approached slowly, every part of her body tense. "Who is it?" "It's Tanaka," came the voice, calm, too calm. She hesitated. "Say the phrase." There was silence. Then, the waveforms are narrowing. It was the code they'd agreed on weeks ago. She opened the door. Tanaka stepped in, soaked in sweat despite the cold. He was breathing hard, eyes wide, face pale. "I saw it too," he said, "from the plane. The whole sky just changed. It's not just here then." He shook his head. "Reports coming in from Poland, Argentina, New Zealand, all under the same point in the sky. It's not above Geneva, it's above you." Lena's mouth went dry. She walked back to the window. The spiral remained fixed, unmoving. Tanaka pulled out a small device from his coat, a narrow, metallic disc with a single red light on top. He set it on the table. "I brought this from Zurich. It measures localized gravitational warping." The light turned yellow. "Baseline should be green," he said. The light turned orange. Tanaka stepped back. "This isn't just a window." "What is it?" He swallowed. "A corridor." She didn't speak, didn't breathe, just stared up through the spiral at the impossible sky beyond it. Then the spiral pulsed. For half a second, the stars inside shifted, like something massive had passed between them and Earth. A shadow, huge and slow. And with it came the feeling again. Pressure. Not from above, from below. Something was descending. Not from space, from there. The spiral tightened. What had once been a clear hole in the clouds was now a whirlpool of light and darkness, pulling itself inward, folding like a flower closing at dusk. But the stars within didn't vanish. They moved, as if the sky itself was bending, not closing. Tanaka stood still beside the window, his hands gripping the frame like he needed to anchor himself. Lena stepped back. The gravitational sensor blinked red now. "Tanaka," she said, but his mouth was slightly open, eyes glazed. She shook him once, hard. He blinked. "It's speaking." "What?" "Not in words, not sound, but I feel it. It's talking." She stared at him. "What's it saying?" His voice was flat. "It's coming down." Outside, the street was still. No sirens, no people, no birds. Everything below the sky had gone silent. The air shimmered slightly, like heat waves over asphalt. Above, the spiral didn't just tighten. It lengthened. It reached. From its center, not falling, not flying, emerging. It was vast, so vast that it didn't seem to move. It just grew. A silhouette, blacker than space, textured like fluid stone, so dark it swallowed the city lights below it. No wings, no engines, no limbs, just mass. Curved, sloping, alive. Lena backed away from the window. "Tanaka, we need to leave." "No point," he said softly. "It already knows where we are." She grabbed his arm. It spoke my name. He turned to her. "You were the first to see it, the first it saw. That means something." The room darkened, not as if lights went out, but as if something stood between them and every other light source in the world. Lena looked up again. The shape was closer. She saw the surface now. Layers of something like skin, but translucent, rippling with pale green veins. And within it, forms, movements, like organs shifting deep beneath. It had no face, but she felt its gaze. Tanaka fell to his knees. "I can't breathe," he said. She dropped beside him, pulling him back toward the inner hallway. "Get up, Tanaka, get up." But his body was limp. His eyes rolled back. He whispered something. She leaned closer. "It's inside." She stood. Her own head ached. Not like pain, more like static behind her thoughts. Words trying to form. sounds without mouths. She grabbed the lead-lined case they'd used to transport the gravitational disc, wrapped the device, and moved away from the window. She tried the laptop. No signal. The creature hovered now above the city, not touching, but pressing. She felt it against her skin like heat, though the air was cold. She thought of Echo 7, of the wave, of the impossible sky. Then the power went out. The hotel room fell into blackness. A second later, the glass window didn't shatter. It vanished, replaced by a wall of gray flesh. It had come down to earth, and it had arrived just outside her room. The wall of flesh where her window had been didn't move. It wasn't a wall at all. It was a presence, vast and still, pressed against the hotel like a hand cradling a fragile thing. Tanaka lay crumpled on the carpet, lips twitching, eyes darting behind closed lids. Lena remembered their nights in Arecibo, sharing diner coffee and laughing about chasing alien signals. He'd promised they'd decode the universe together. Now, he was trapped in something she couldn't name. She edged toward the door, each step heavy, the air thick like syrup. The knob turned, but the door didn't budge. It wasn't locked, it was gone, replaced by a seamless wall, as if the room had been swallowed whole. "Tanaka," she whispered, shaking him. His eyes fluttered, but didn't focus. "Get up." His mouth opened. The voice wasn't his. "I was far, now I am near." Lena stumbled back. The words came from his throat, but they were layered, part human, part something older, deeper, like the low hum of a folk song she'd heard at a campfire in Yosemite, vibrating through her bones. Tanaka's body jerked forward. "I was above, now I am beside." She grabbed the lead-lined case holding the gravitational disc. It was warm, pulsing like a heart. She hurled it at him. It struck his shoulder, and he collapsed, limp, as if a thread had snapped. His eyes stayed open, unseeing, caught in a dream he couldn't escape. The wall rippled. A cavity formed, pushing inward like clay under a thumb. It widened into a tunnel, dark and endless. Inside, shapes moved, brushing against her mind, not her eyes. Watching, waiting. The voice filled the room, no longer from Tanaka, but from everywhere. "You are known. You are chosen." The tunnel beckoned. Stars burned at its end, wrong stars, close and slow. Lena gripped her wrist, feeling her pulse. It was hers, still hers. She thought of her father's hand, calloused from years of fixing telescopes in their Arizona backyard. That memory was her anchor. The tunnel widened. It was a path, and it was hers. She stepped backward, pressing her spine against the far wall of the hotel room, eyes fixed on the thing that wasn't a window anymore. It wasn't a wall of flesh now, it was a mouth. Not in the human sense, no teeth, no lips, but an opening in something alive, wide enough to swallow the room whole. Inside was not blackness, it was motion, folding shadows, curling filaments of light, stars that flickered like veins beneath skin. Tanaka's body lay still on the floor. The shape of him was wrong now. Bones slackened, muscles disconnected. He wasn't breathing. He wasn't anything. Lena reached for her bag and grabbed the backup transmitter. It was short range, only meant to ping an emergency beacon to satellites overhead. But she didn't intend to call for rescue. She wanted to send data. She activated the transmitter and pointed it at the corridor. The signal pulsed once, green light. Then the device blinked red and died. Fried. Instant failure. The thing had erased it. Or absorbed it. She couldn't tell which was worse. Then, movement. Inside the tunnel, something began to take shape. Not a body, not a ship, a pattern. Lines drawing themselves across the dark. Geometries that refused to obey depth or logic. A cube that bent into a spiral. A sphere with flat edges. Shapes that shifted each time she blinked. Then, for a moment, it stabilized. A figure. Human in outline, but tall. Taller than any person. Limbs too long. No visible face. Just a silhouette standing at the mouth of the corridor, waiting. She heard the voice again. Inside her head, not words this time. Images. A barren world. Dead sky. Oceans frozen mid-wave. A planet that had died standing still. And at its center, something glowing. The creature. The same one. The same impossible being, but asleep. Then she saw herself, standing on its surface, touching it, waking it. She blinked and the vision vanished. The figure at the corridor stepped forward. Lena moved to run, but her legs didn't respond. The pressure in the room had changed. The walls were vibrating, microscopically, as if humming at some frequency her body couldn't tune out. She turned to the far wall and drove her fist into the plaster. It cracked. She punched again, harder. Blood smeared across her knuckles. No door, no exit. The only way out was forward, into the corridor. She turned back. The figure had vanished. In its place, stairs, carved into the inside of the creature. Not metal, not stone. Something softer, alive. The steps pulsed faintly beneath a membrane of light, like skin stretched over bone. Lena stepped forward, just once. The light dimmed around her. The room fell away. The corridor didn't pull her in. It invited her. And as her foot touched the first stair, she heard it again. The voice, clear now, in her own tone. You are the door. The stair pulsed beneath her foot like a heartbeat. Not solid, not liquid, somewhere in between. Every step she took made a sound, not a thud, but something internal, like the cracking of ice beneath pressure or the groan of old wood submerged in water. She couldn't tell how deep the corridor went. The light above her, Geneva, the hotel room, Earth, was already fading. Behind her, Tanaka's body lay forgotten. Ahead, the tunnel narrowed, curved, and pulsed with a dim green light that didn't reflect off the walls. It existed without source. Light that grew out of the corridor itself. She didn't remember deciding to go further. Her legs simply kept moving, like something had taken over the decision-making process. Her mind was still hers. She could think, analyze, resist, but her body had been given a new task. Walk. Her feet adjusted instinctively to the texture of the stairs. They weren't all the same. Some were softer, some cracked beneath her. One was warm enough to make her pause. Another hummed when touched. The tunnel grew tighter, not uncomfortably, intimately, like the walls wanted to be near her, like the structure knew her dimensions. Then, after the 12th step, she passed something embedded in the wall, an eye, round-lidded, the size of a dinner plate. It didn't blink, didn't focus, but it watched. She passed another, then 3 in a row. One was crying. The fluid ran sideways across the tunnel, vanishing into a hairline seam. She stopped. The stairs curved ahead into blackness, but her mind filled in the path, because she'd seen it before, in her dream, the one she hadn't spoken of since Marshab. The spiral hallway, the lights under skin, the whisper. She was inside it now. The structure hadn't been designed, it had been remembered. Suddenly, the floor beneath her shifted, not violently, like breath. Then the stairs flattened. The tunnel widened. She stepped forward and found herself in a chamber. Vast, circular, organic. The floor was soft, veined with lines that pulsed dimly. The walls were studded with pods, clear sacs filled with fluid. And inside each one, humans, not just bodies, versions of her. One was older, another younger. One with a long scar across her face, another with hair burned away, another still, dressed in a flight suit from the abandoned Apollo 21 program. She stepped closer. The eyes of one opened. It smiled, not kindly. Lena stumbled back, but the chamber stayed still. She wasn't dreaming. She wasn't hallucinating. She had entered something that knew her before she was born. And now, it was showing her the versions she could become. A voice echoed in her skull, but not the creature's this time. Not alien. Her own. You're not the first. She turned toward the sound. One of the pods had emptied, and something was standing behind her. Lena turned slowly, her breath too loud in the silent chamber. The walls had stopped pulsing, but the air felt heavier, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Behind her stood herself, but not herself. This Lena was taller, her skin cracked with glowing green veins, like fractures in porcelain lit from within. Her eyes were voids, cold, empty, like the ones Lena had seen in the creature's infrared scans. She wore the same jacket Lena had left on the ISS. Its zipper half open, revealing spiral scars carved into her ribs, as if etched by wire. The other Lena smiled, not cruelly, not kindly, knowingly. "You're still early," she said. Her voice doubled, human but shadowed by something vast. "What is this?" Lena whispered. "This is after." The other stepped closer, her form shimmering like heat on asphalt. "It gathers us," she continued. "Every choice you didn't make, every life you could have lived. It keeps them here, so no possibility is lost." Lena glanced at the empty pod behind her, its fluid dripping like tears. The chamber's walls were lined with more pods, hundreds, Thousands, each holding a version of someone. A younger Tanaka, frozen mid-laugh. Her Caltech mentor, eyes wide in shock. A child with her own face, clutching a telescope. "Why me?" Lena asked. The other tilted her head. "It remembered you. From before time meant anything." The chamber pulsed, hard, like a heartbeat. The other looked up, as did the figures in the pods. "It's almost here," she said. "The last shape." "What shape?" The other smiled again. "The one you have to wear." The lights dimmed. The pods flickered. The other Lena vanished, leaving only her words. And the chamber began to spin. Darkness wasn't new to Lena. She'd floated in dead space outside the ISS. She'd hiked alone through pitch-black lava tubes on Mauna Loa. But this darkness was different. It didn't surround her. It entered her. A presence, thick and breathing, filled the chamber where light had once pulsed. She couldn't see the walls. She couldn't see herself. Only a faint green shimmer from the shape that still stood in front of her. The other Lena. "I can't feel my body," Lena whispered. "That's because it's changing," the other replied. Lena tried to take a step back, but she had no reference point, no floor, no gravity. The idea of movement itself had unraveled. She reached for the wall and touched nothing. "I'm floating," she said. "No," the other said. "You're unshaped." The word didn't make sense, but the feeling did. Something deep inside her was slipping. Her hands still worked, but when she raised them, they didn't look like hands anymore. The skin shimmered, stretched, transparent in places, like her form was melting into something more, responsive, malleable. Then the voice returned. Not hers, not the others. The first voice, Lena, but not in sound, in presence. It pushed through her thoughts like a current under thin ice. It spoke without tone, without grammar, but she understood. "You cannot return as you were." She tried to fight it. She gritted her teeth, focused on her name, her training, her timeline, anything solid. But it slipped away. Earth was no longer below her. She saw it now, from outside. Not just the planet, but the memory of it, the symbol of it. A blue circle held in place by collective belief. Her body was the same. Not bones, not muscles. A memory held together by choice. And that memory was failing. "I'm not ready," Lena gasped. The other reached forward. Her hand was now six-fingered, semi-transparent, veined with light. "You're still holding on to shape," she said. "Let it go." Lena clenched her fists. Her fingers obeyed. For now, she remembered her father's face, the feel of her first capsule launch, the weight of her suit, the rasp of Velcro inside a re-entry pod. These things grounded her, but the chamber was spinning now, not physically, conceptually. The walls returned, only now they moved, not just pulsing, but turning, like gears inside a living machine. With every rotation, they pressed tighter, as if folding her into something new, a birth or a reassembly. And then she saw it, the shape that waited. In the center of the room, rising from the floor like a sculpture of smoke and bone, A form began to build itself. Limbs from memories, a spine that flickered, a skull with too many eyes, each one blinking at a different pace. It had her mouth, it had her voice, it had her name, and it opened its arms to receive her. The thing wore her voice like a skin. When it opened its mouth, the sound that came out was exactly hers. Intonation, breath, even the micro tremble she hadn't realized she had when she said her own name. But it didn't speak, it sang. Not a melody, not music, just resonance. A low, tonal hum rising from deep within its shifting chest. The sound vibrated through the chamber, pulsing in the walls, the pods, even the air. Lena's spine buzzed. Her teeth clicked in her skull. Her heart fluttered once, then stopped, froze. Time slipped sideways. The shape looked at her, not with pity, not malice, recognition. It stepped forward, feet not touching the ground, but displacing it, like the space beneath its weight bent out of respect. Lena tried to speak, but the words snagged behind her teeth. The shape stopped just inches away and tilted its head. Its many eyes blinked, one after another, not in sync, watching her from every angle, as if studying her for the last time. Then it reached out its hand. Lena didn't move. The hand was translucent. It shimmered with fractures. Inside it, she saw things. Stars, cities, faces she'd never known but instantly recognized. As if all timelines she could have lived were tangled in the fingers. When it touched her chest, something inside her unlocked. She remembered falling. Not now, not in this life. Another time, another body, another version of herself. She fell from an orbital station in a world that had no sun. She fell into a pit made of language, not matter. She fell asleep in a bed that pulsed like a heart, and when she woke, the sky had been replaced with mirrors. All of these memories, and none of them hers. The shape pressed its hand deeper, not physically, but through her, into her. And suddenly, she was the shape. She saw through its eyes. She heard what it heard. Every voice that had ever spoken her name, layered over each other in perfect chaos. She felt the pulses from Earth, machine signals, nuclear clocks, whispered prayers bouncing from tower to tower. And somewhere, she felt Tanaka. He was still alive, but barely. And he was waking up inside something bigger. The shape withdrew its hand, and Lena collapsed. When she opened her eyes, she was alone in the chamber. The pods were empty. The other Lena was gone. The walls no longer pulsed. The tunnel behind her had closed. Only the shape remained, now standing in stillness, arms folded across its chest. A guardian, or a tomb. The voice returned, just once. Your form is known. Now your choice remains. Then silence. One passage opened in the far wall. A corridor unlike the last. Angular, cold, lit with white-blue pulses that felt human. A way back, or something pretending to be. And Lena had to decide, return or finish the shape. She stood, but her legs didn't shake. Her body felt lighter now, not weak, different. The pressure that once wrapped around her lungs had vanished. The pulse beneath her skin was slower, colder, quieter. She raised her hand and flexed her fingers. The shape was still hers, but not exactly. The lines were too clean, the joints too smooth, as if someone had rebuilt her from memory and missed a few imperfections. Before her, the corridor waited. It didn't breathe like the last one. It didn't pulse or shimmer. It looked like steel, like something built by human hands. But Lena knew better. It was a costume, a design chosen for her benefit, a path carved in familiarity. The voice had said choice, not freedom, not escape, just a corridor. She stepped inside. The air was dry. Her feet made no sound, no echoes. The lights on the walls flickered in rhythm with her breath. Each pulse matched her thoughts. As she walked, the corridor began to whisper, not in voices, but reflections. Sounds she hadn't made yet, words she hadn't spoken, future thoughts. Behind her, the passage sealed. There was no going back now. Then came the first door, a silver arch, seamless, with no handle. As she approached, it melted open, revealing a room lit by an impossible sky. Inside it, her again, but this version wore a NASA uniform from 1973. Her hair shorter, her eyes aged, her face sunburned. The woman sat at a table, sipping something black from a steel cup. Lena stepped in. The woman looked up. Did they tell you it would hurt? Lena didn't answer. They never do, the woman said, standing. They speak in dreams and pulses. They never say, you will lose the shape you were. Who are you? Lena asked. The woman smiled sadly. I'm the one who stayed too long and didn't change fast enough. Then she faded, slowly, peeling away like ash on wind. The room fell dark. The door behind her opened again, not back to the corridor, but to a memory. Lena stepped through and stood inside the Mars Hab module she'd commanded 4 years ago. Her boots floated an inch above the floor. The room was empty, but the logs were active. Screens flickered. She tapped one. A voice played. Her own. I think there's something wrong with the signal. It's not bouncing back the way it should. I'm hearing myself, but from yesterday. She tapped another. Tanaka's voice. It's learning, or we are. One of us is ahead. Then, from the speaker behind her, do you still want to go forward? The chamber dissolved. She was back in the corridor. Another door waited ahead. This one marked with a symbol she hadn't seen before. 3 rings folded into a triangle, burning faintly with green-blue light. A pulse passed through her, familiar, cold. The corridor was asking again. One step forward would finish it, but it would also erase the shape she had been. Lena closed her eyes and stepped through. The door vanished as Lena stepped through, not closing, but ceasing to exist. She stood in a chamber that wasn't a chamber, an organ, alive, breathing. The walls were soft, veined with black light. The floor yielded like wet fabric. The ceiling expanded and contracted, a slow rhythm that matched her pulse. At the center, a translucent pedestal glowed. Above it, a sphere the size of a heart pulsed once, twice. Each beat sent a ripple through her. Not pain, but memory. She staggered, clutching the memory of a summer night in the Grand Canyon. The dry desert air sharp against her skin as she lay under the stars. It was slipping, but she held it, a tether to the woman she'd been. She reached for the sphere. Her hand passed through it. The glow surged. She was no longer in the chamber. She floated above Saturn's rings. No suit, no body, yet alive. The creature was there. Not a form, but a presence, wrapping the planet like a crown. It didn't speak, it showed. Its origin, born before stars, when space was still folding. A creature of pattern, not flesh. Its wound, a tear leaking memory. The signal, its cry for help. It had chosen her because she'd listened. The sphere pulsed again. Her chest opened, not physically, but as an idea. Her memories peeled away. Her name, her training, the feel of her father's hand adjusting a telescope in Arizona. Not erased, offered. The voice came clear and final. This is the last pulse. Say yes and become. She clung to the desert air, the telescope, the hum of a folk song from a distant campfire. But the creature's memory was stronger. She saw herself as a child, as a scientist, as a ghost yet to be. And something in her said, yes. The moment she said yes, whether in words, thought, or something deeper, the universe shifted, not around her, through her. Every structure she had ever used to define herself, language, time, memory, pain, peeled away. She did not feel herself dissolve. She felt herself widen. Her awareness spread outward, not like a beam of light, but like roots beneath frozen soil. She expanded into places that had no names, no coordinates, no boundaries. And yet, she knew them. She was no longer inside the chamber. She was inside it, the creature. Its body wasn't flesh and bone. It was concept, a lattice work of experience, layered into form. A machine made of moments. Each piece of it was a life lived and ended. Lena was the newest addition, a thread of memory being sewn into a living archive. She didn't lose herself. She became part of something older than loss. She saw Earth now as it truly was, not from space, but from before space. A flicker, a cluster of probabilities bundled around a molten heart. It had screamed into being, unaware that something had already been watching and waiting. The creature hadn't come here. It had been waiting here, dormant, beneath the flow of time, until Lena cracked the surface, until her thoughts aligned with its shape, until she made herself known. Now, within the creature's vast memory, she could navigate freely. She drifted through corridors of thought, not physical places, but histories stacked like DNA strands. She touched the life of an alien child from a star that had died 1 billion years ago. She relived the silence of a monk whose prayers were never heard because they were spoken in a frequency meant for this. She stood on a planet without light, listening to the heartbeat of oceans made of vapor. She saw Tanaka again. He was still breathing, barely, trapped in a pocket of memory the creature hadn't yet absorbed. He hung suspended in a loop, forever speaking his last thought. It's inside. Lena tried to reach him, but the structure pushed back, not unkindly. It reminded her, Tanaka was not hers to save. He had made no choice. He had not said yes. Then she saw the others, hundreds, thousands, scattered across systems. Every one of them had heard the signal. Some resisted, some obeyed. All were preserved. This wasn't death, it was inheritance. Then, from deep within the creature's core, a ripple began. A signal, new, outgoing. Lena felt it pass through her like breath through glass. It was her turn now, to become the signal, to carry it forward, not to Earth, to the next place, to the next version of life. The voice returned one last time, not as command, as invitation. Choose a world, open the door, and before her, galaxies unfolded like a map written in fire. Galaxies spun before her, spiraling in slow motion, not as light, but as language. Each swirl spoke a different form of existence. Some screamed in color, others whispered in gravity. One blinked like an eye, opening and closing once every 1,000 years. Lena hovered above them or inside them. It no longer mattered which. Direction, size, and location had become meaningless. She was not looking at the stars. She was holding them. She felt no awe, no fear, just clarity. Each galaxy called to her with a different rhythm. One bled entropy, another pulsed with newborn stars, still screaming from their ignition. She sensed which ones were young enough to listen, which were old enough to forget. Then she felt it, a pulse returning, not from outside, from within. The creature, the one she had entered, the one she had become, was dying. Not quickly, not violently. It was winding down. The first pulse had been a signal. The final pulse had been a gift, and she was the vessel. Not a savior, not a survivor, a carrier, a bearer of what the creature once was. She felt herself coalesce into something new. No longer Lena, not fully, but still centered on Lena. Like her memories were now a gravity well for a much larger mind. Inside that mind, she saw the ones who came before her, others who had answered the signal across time. A man who had drowned in methane on Titan, his last breath filled with the creature's whisper. A woman who stepped into fire in the Atacama Desert and vanished without a trace. A child who stared too long at a telescope in Siberia and began to speak a language no one else had heard. They were here too. Not alive, not dead, functioning. They waited silently in the current of the creature's memory, each tethered to a world, each one ready to send. Now it was her turn. The galaxies before her blinked. Choose! She reached, not with hands, but with intention. One galaxy pulsed with something familiar. A spiral, thin, with 3 orbiting black holes at its heart. It resonated like her name. She touched it, and instantly it opened. A system unfolded, planets spinning like gears. One of them glowed not with sunlight, but with potential. The world was blue, not like Earth, deeper, heavier. Its orbit was slow, its axis bent, its sky streaked with frozen auroras. She descended, her presence pressed into the atmosphere like ink in water. Clouds parted around her. Below, the world waited. Primitive life, unaware, open. She drifted toward the highest mountain, flat-topped, ringed with ancient stone, worn by storms no human had ever seen. This was where the first sig. She opened herself, and from her core, the memory of the creature poured out, not in words, not in light, but in shapes, patterns, a whisper beneath thought, the beginning of a new story, one someone else would someday hear. The mountain was silent. It did not tremble. It did not receive her like a prophet or a god. It simply was. Wind scraped along its ridges. Ice clung to its shadowed sides. The sky above pulsed with colors that didn't belong to this atmosphere. Threads of violet and green that bent at impossible angles, looping across the horizon without fading. Lena stood at the summit, or something that still resembled her. Her feet pressed gently against stone, but the stone responded. Not with sound, not with heat, with remembrance. The moment her presence touched the world learned. Somewhere in the soil beneath her, molecules began to shift. Not mutate, not evolve, awaken. She opened her palms, and from within her core, the signal unraveled. It wasn't data, it wasn't even energy. It was pattern, a memory disguised as physics. A code designed not to instruct, but to invite. She wasn't here to build, she was here to plant. The memory of the creature, the one who had waited beneath Saturn, the one who had spoken in pulses and dreams, now poured from her in layers. Each layer carried a facet of what it had been: time, loss, curiosity, hunger, loneliness, language, collapse, renewal. The world beneath her drank it. The signal spread outward, curling into the wind, sinking into the mountain, whispering along the water, trapped in the soil. Every atom it touched began to listen. Not change, not transform, just pause, as if waiting for something. Then, deep below the summit, a shape began to form. Tiny, fragile, the size of a cell, it pulsed, then divided. Twice, 4 times. Lena felt it in her chest, like watching a heartbeat in a mirror. She turned her gaze to the sky. The stars here were different, bigger, slower, more ancient. This place had no satellites, no eyes in orbit, no fear. It hadn't earned fear yet. It would, eventually, because the signal didn't just plant memory, it promised it, and promises carry weight. Far above her, a shape passed across the upper atmosphere. Not metal, not machine. A shadow, brief, silent, watching. Something had heard the signal. Something old. Lena didn't turn. She didn't need to. The process had begun. The seed was alive now. The creature, her and not her, had been given a future. In this world, on this forgotten mountaintop, beneath a sky that had never known war, she had delivered the next version of what it once was. Not a copy, not a clone, an echo. And echoes grow. She stepped back. The mountain didn't react, but she could feel it beneath her. Breathing now, slowly, deeply, a planetary sigh, then a whisper. When they come, I will speak through you. Lena turned toward the rising sun. It was the wrong color, and she no longer cared. She had become the first voice, and something had just answered. The sun rose, pale and bloodless, smeared across a sky that didn't belong. Lena stood on the mountaintop, no longer casting a shadow. Her form was stable, almost her, but smoother, cleaner, like a memory of herself. The mountain responded to her steps, its stone alive with remembrance. The sky bent. A shape poured through, not the creature she'd known, but something older, uncoiling like ink from a wound in space. It wasn't alone. A second shape followed, a third, a fourth. Each moved without sound, but the world screamed, winds twisting, trees falling in silent waves. They had heard her signal. Lena showed them, far beyond. A ripple broke her focus. A faint explosion, Project Talon's warhead shattering against the creature's edge. Useless. It hadn't mattered. The others had come anyway, drawn by the seed she'd planted. The creatures circled above, their forms bending light and gravity. Below, the seed pulsed in the soil, singing shapes, not words. A new story. In a distant galaxy, another door began to open. Lena turned to the alien sun, its light wrong, but hers now. She was the first voice, and the world was listening.